This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
CMS Superintendent Clayton Wilcox calls for more security measures after the mass shooting in Florida. Plus, Charlotte makes a bid for the 2020 Republican National Convention, and the North Carolina Attorney General takes a closer look at the potential merger of two large-scale health systems. These topics and more next on Off the Record. Good evening and welcome to Off the Record. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. In the next half hour, we'll take a look at some of the top stories this week. But first, I'd like to introduce our panel of reporters. We have John Paul Gallis with the Greater Charlotte Biz, Kirsten Garris with Spectrum News, Nick Oxner with WBTV News, and veteran broadcaster B. Thompson. So glad to have you all here. Tragic news this week. A mass shooting at a South Florida school left 17 dead. Once again, schools across the country are taking a closer look at security measures. Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Superintendent Clayton Wilcox met with reporters on Thursday, and he's calling for beefed up security measures, locking mechanisms on doors, and also maybe armed security officers. What are your thoughts as you look back over the events of this weekend? You know, clearly there were red flags that were ignored in this case.
Well, the thing that struck me about all of this is that here we go again. Here we go again. And there are people who are saying, why didn't you stop him from buying a gun? Technically, legally, he could. He was over 18. He didn't have a criminal background history. So technically, he could have gone right through this and gotten it done. But here we go again. Now what do we do?
There's not much of a response from either our federal government or our state government, so we're going to have to act locally. Our school systems, our police department, we're going to have to put more policemen in schools. We're going to have to put more locks on doors. We're going to have to put metal detectors in schools. We've got to find a way to protect our kids. Nobody else is stepping forward, so it's going to cost us all locally to protect our schools.
And did you find that troubling whenever some of the politicians were asked about this incident and they pretty much said, it's still newly developing details, so basically they had no comment?
I think it's absolutely sickening that they're not responding. I think we've had so many of these shootings over the last couple of years, ever since Sandy Hook, and it continues one after another, and nobody is taking any action. Even our president gives a speech without even mentioning the word gun. Where is the outrage that ought to be present?
And I think part of the problem is that this has become such a polarized issue, and there are two sides. This may be a gun problem, maybe a mental health problem, maybe a whole other thing that we haven't thought about problem. But what we know is that there's a lack of willingness to sit down from all sides and really start talking about it. And until that happens, we're never going to solve anything. We're never going to make any progress.
We're all intimidated by the NRA and its power over our Congress and our elected officials. We know that 75% of the people want background checks. We know that 75% of the people in this country don't even own guns. 3% of the people in this country own most of the guns. But the NRA holds everyone accountable in our Congress, and they give out millions of dollars in support of candidates, and people are intimidated to go up against them. I think the only way we'll ever get any results, any change, is when the NRA steps forward responsibly and recommends action in one way or another.
And I don't think we'll actually see that happen anytime soon. And that's why you do hear the police chief, you hear the superintendent saying these are things we can do now. And actually what I thought was interesting, the superintendent mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people picked up on. They said parents need to have conversations with their kids about having a code. If something happens, have a code you can send to each other, like a or a number that says I'm safe. Because unfortunately, it's not a question of if it will happen, it's a question of when. And that is something I think now parents and families can start talking about, well, how do you react to this? What do you need to do? And those are the conversations I think we need to be having, because right now, as we all know, it takes a while for things to happen in Washington, and this is another issue.
Well, you know, one of the things that, and I don't mean for this to sound light, but I mentioned it to you in advance. As I was watching all of this last night, a scene from a movie came into my head. You remember the movie, The Best Little, you know what kind of house it was, in Texas. Charles Durning played the role of the governor. One of his best parts was a little song called Sidestep, and where his little hat would turn around on his head, and he's like, ooh, I love to do the little sidestep, and lead the people on. from what you were saying, John Paul and Nick, of sides, nobody really wants to talk about it. The president doesn't even say it. It made me think of that caricature of a politician saying, I love to do the little sidestep and lead the people on because I don't want to directly answer and deal with this issue, and that's what's going on. We look at our school systems now, we went to open campuses. So now anybody can just walk on a campus. So even if you lock the doors, if you got open hallways or malls where kids can gather, someone could go into school and be upstairs in the mall and shoot down on the common area. How do you protect against something like that? And then do we become such a police state that no one can move? You cannot say anything if all of a sudden you're under surveillance. How do we protect individual rights and protect community rights at the same time? I don't know how we answer that question, but I do know you can't answer the question if you don't talk about it.
Well, they ask us all to say something if we see something. Well, let's think about it. I heard that he actually went to the school by Uber.
Yeah.
And where was the Uber driver? How do you carry all those weapons into the school out of a car without recognizing something's up at the time? But to expect all of us to report on each other is a pretty crazy thing. And to blame it all on mentally ill is another problem.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people aren't mentally ill, they're just plain angry.
Well, but we know this young man was mentally ill, had been recommended for treatment and stopped receiving treatment. We've seen that mental illness as a common theme. And when you look at Adam Lanza, when you look at any number of these other shooters who have been in these mass, not all, but many of them have been mentally ill. And so, again, goes back to, I don't think there's one silver bullet in this.
If they're going to blame it on mentally ill, then let's see a movement to fund more mentally ill
exactly.
coverage.
Sure.
And I don't see any effort going forward in that direction either.
I keep hearing people also saying, and I'll let this go, that if you are mentally ill, why didn't he just kill himself? Why do every time something like this comes up, they kill everybody else, but don't get around to killing themselves? And I don't mean to push people to do that, but if you're going to use that as the reason why I was mentally ill, a lot of people who are dealing with depression commit suicide.
You get a lot more coverage when you shoot 17 people than when you shoot yourself.
That's right.
Well, it's no secret the National Rifle Association pumps lots of money into the campaigns of some political candidates following this week's mass shooting in Florida. Reporters Jim Morrill and Brian Murphy wrote about this topic in the Charlotte Observer. And according to the Center for Responsive Politics, North Carolina's 2 U.S. senators are among the top beneficiaries of NRA campaign money. Now, NRA groups have given Republican Senator Richard Burr nearly $7 million. Senator Tom Tillis has gotten $4.5 million. Now, those that are calling for gun control legislation and some reforms, can we expect any of that to happen when the lobbyists, the NRA, are right there in the back pockets of these politicians?
I think there's a real opportunity for Trump to come forward and actually invite some legislation to address this problem, whether it's background checks or some kind of protection against everybody getting an AR-15. There was legislation, a law against assault vehicles in the late 80s, early 90s, and that sunsetted. There is a chance for some things going forward, but it's going to take someone from the right side of the aisle to bring this forward and make something happen.
And despite his speech yesterday that I think many found to fall short of expectations and what you would expect in a moment like this. We're hearing some other reports, a new one from Axios this morning, saying that President Trump internally has instructed his staff to try to craft a plan to address this. And it'll be interesting because I think if Donald Trump wants to be the kind of post-partisan, above the fray, deal-making president that he campaigned as, this could be an issue where he could eschew political norms, eschew the NRA, who had a big hand in his election, and come forward and find something. And I think that would be the Donald Trump that he told voters he would be.
So it would be a true test of his legacy.
It sure would.
Indeed. Well, this week we learned the city, along with the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, is working on a proposal to lure the 2020 Republican National Convention to the Queen City. Their proposal is due by the end of the month, so they've got to hustle. Charlotte hosted the Democratic National Convention in 2012, and the economic impact was $163 million for the city. That's a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen here? Do you think we have a good chance of landing it since we had the DNC a few years ago?
I think we do because, Charlotte is one of the largest cities in the state, but also we're a swing state in general. North Carolina goes from red to blue almost every other election, and we're a place that people want to come. We are a city of movers and shakers, and right away you're seeing a lot of Republican support. We are a very Democratic city, so obviously this was a natural fit for the DNC, but to see the local Mecklenburg County GOP party stepping up, to hear Senator Thom Tillis saying, hey, we are ready to help the city in any way possible to bring this convention here, that's a lot of
I
big
was
things.
more interested to hear from the Democrats who were excited to have it.
That's right, yeah.
Viola
But yeah.
Isle said, "Hey, this would be great," and
Exactly.
and it'd be interesting, right? Because Republican Pat McCrory was mayor when, or
That's
you know,
so true.
When the Democrats came
when landed the DNC. So it's interesting if you think about it from that perspective. But you know, I think this would be a great thing. Early contenders, in addition to Charlotte, Nevada, Las Vegas has
Yeah.
been mentioned. Looks like Nashville, Tennessee's been
Yeah.
invited to bid. So the competition could be pretty stiff, but I think Charlotte could be a good contender.
Well, I think one of the reasons why they're almost singing Kumbaya together, Republicans and Democrats, about this is the Kumbaya money. Because it will be a lot of money. If the Democrats could bring in that much, how much can the Republicans bring in? But the thing I think they also look at is Charlotte handled that Democratic convention without incident, even with some protesters, not to the degree that I think they're going to expect to see for the Republicans, but they handled the people who came for the convention and those who came to see what the convention was going to be about. And now with more rooms, all of that helps out.
And we're a lot better postured today
Yeah.
than we were for the DNC.
God, yes.
We've got more hotel rooms, more restaurants. We would love to have all of that activity come back to the city.
And,
You
even,
definitely want
and
the
even
money.
the infrastructure too within the uptown Charlotte area. I remember all the cameras and surveillance mechanisms that were installed before the DNC.
And still there.
Well, it's still there. We're still benefiting from it. And when we had all the riots last year, you know, those cameras helped out with the police and
We
trying
could
to
use
track.
an upgrade. We get another $50 million from the federal government if we get the RNC here. And I'm sure we could spread the cameras to further distances outside of the city.
And even from a transportation standpoint, with light rail running in both directions
That's
now,
true.
that brings in hotels and restaurants and everything from the north end of the county and people being able to come in and to not have as much congestion in Center City, because a lot of people who don't want to be in all that will probably leave Charlotte for that week and let
Yes.
all the conventioneers come in. But having covered a Democratic convention when there was a lot of opposition going on the last time the Democrats were in the South, before Charlotte was in Atlanta, and they had to have certain staging areas for people who wanted protests. Keep in mind, 2020 will be the first time that your current president will be at the convention. Who knows if he's going to seek, oh, he's probably going to try, but everybody and their mama's going to show up in Charlotte to protest either in support or against. So
right.
how do you handle that and protect the conventioneers at the same time? That's going to require a lot.
A lot of logistics there. North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein is raising concerns about the merger of Atrium Health and UNC Healthcare. Last week, Carolina's healthcare system, or Atrium, changed its name to Atrium Health. Here's what Attorney General Stein told WFAE. He said, "My priority is to look out for North Carolina's healthcare patients. When large health systems merge, patients and businesses often end up paying more. I intend to make sure that doesn't happen here." He seems to be very concerned about this large organization getting even larger.
This is not a good sign for this deal. This is just the latest bit of skepticism that's been thrown on this deal from North Carolina leaders. It's interesting to me, you know, Attorney General Josh Stein, a Democrat, takes this step, which could potentially be a very serious step. We've also seen a lot of opposition and vocal opposition from Republican Treasurer Dale Folwell. And so you have statewide elected officials on the Council of State from both parties who've come out and voiced skepticism, in addition to the skepticism you've heard from members of the Board of Governors, the UNC Board of Governors, who I think they would say that ultimately they would need to approve this deal. I don't know that UNC Health agrees with that, but I think there's a lot of skepticism left and a lot of questions left to be answered.
There are a lot of trade-offs to be considered with a merger of the sort that Carolina's now Atrium is talking about. Our healthcare system is not a free enterprise system. There's a lot of federal money involved in this. There's a lot of state money involved in it with Medicare and Medicaid. And what's been happening is hospitals across the state, especially in rural areas, are closing. And we need to make sure that there is care going into those communities. A merger of this sort might require more support to rural communities, and that would be an advantage to a lot of communities that now don't have care.
Well, this week, 7 corrections officers were attacked inside North Carolina prisons. You'll recall last year, 5 prison workers were killed while working on the job. Now, Nick, I know you've been covering this story quite a bit over the last year. What do you know about the incidents that have happened this week? And does it feel like state lawmakers are doing anything to try to provide more resources for the Department of Corrections?
Well, I think everyone is waiting for both the General Assembly to step in and take some action to fix the problem, as well as leaders at the Department of Public Safety and the prison administration to step in and take some action. But here's what we know about the 7 corrections officers who were attacked this week. They were at 4 spread across 4 different facilities. Two of the incidents were somewhat minor, but still resulted in some injuries to the corrections officers. One of them was at one of the attacks was at Pasquotank Correctional Facility. That's the same prison where 4 inmates or where 4 employees were killed by inmates in an attempted prison break. And here's the crazy thing about the Pasquotank incident. I reached out for comment to prison administrators earlier this week for that story. We had already internal documents that we had obtained from inside the prison that documented what happened. A corrections officer, a female sergeant, essentially got a big bear hug, not the friendly kind, from an inmate at Pasquotank. She ended up spraining or injuring her wrist. We have the internal documents that tell us that. The spokesperson for the prison system told me in an email on the record that no attack happened.
Wow.
We literally caught the prison system lying about a corrections officer being attacked, and that is frightening.
There have been many reports that say there's just a lax safety culture in these prisons. Why is that?
Well, because there's a culture on covering things up. We have a big series starting to air on Monday, and we talked with people. We talked with whistleblowers who were retaliated against after they tried to blow the whistle internally. We talked to a woman, a personnel clerk at one of the prisons in eastern North Carolina, who said she was asked to fudge the numbers of corrections officers that they actually have on their payroll, so it made it look like they had more than they actually did. And so the culture here is to do what you can to look as good as you can at whatever cost.
I have to wonder about, we have state prisoners, but there are also federal prisoners that are housed in our state prisons, are there not?
Maybe.
That they will pay, just like with the sheriff's department,
Sure.
and paying the money for you to look out for federal prisoners, so they've got to make themselves look better. But the concern, I guess, for a prison guard going in a situation like this, if you already know somebody's been attacked, where you were thinking about working or where you do work, and you're inside and you know what's going on, you're not going to leave yourself open for that. So then it comes the question of who's watching the prisoners if the guards are trying to watch their own backs because management is not watching it for them. And if you can't get people to come and work in a prison system that is continuously growing, it makes me a little concerned about the concept, people saying, well, we need to have for-profit prison systems. That whole animal comes in because
That is
they'll
not
say
the answer to the problems.
and
that
it's
our
not.
prison
But
system
that's
faces.
what concerns me. That will be an answer. Someone will say, well, if you can't
I'm
do it
surprised
state,
we
let's
haven't.
do it
I'm
private.
surprised we haven't heard it yet. Kind of pleasantly surprised, but I don't think there's an appetite in Raleigh to do that.
I should hope not, because that means you have to have a court system that continues to have a supply of prisoners to make that for-profit prison actually profitable.
Now, one of the injured officers this week was from Stanley, at a facility in Stanley County. Correct?
Yes, was involved. That one was a minor incident. The corrections officer, walked away, not nearly shaken up, I think, and rattled, but relatively minor. But that's right. And it's important to remember there are 55 prisons across the state of North Carolina, and the problems impacting our state's prisons impact our neighbors across the entire state. And when you talk to corrections officers and employees in the prison system, they all predict that the next big, deadly, bad thing to happen is going to be at Lanesboro Correctional Institution in Anson County, which is big and dangerous and has had a lot of problems, but not on the scale that we've seen in these other facilities yet.
When it comes to a topic like education, it's real easy to get the citizenry to, call legislators maybe and, say, hey, you need to be pouring more money into my county or helping out with more teachers or whatnot. When it comes to the Department of Corrections, this seems to be an area where a lot of people probably don't care.
Well, you probably don't think about it. because it's something that, and that's good, right? If we're not thinking about prisons, that means they're running efficiently and effectively. There are more than 9,000 corrections officers, and that's just actual corrections officers, not support staff, across the state, though. They make up a large constituency, and this is a thing you want to run right, so because there are really drastic public safety consequences if it doesn't.
But you know what I think most, when you say the public's concept of this, the public is getting a concept that prisoners are being treated to a vacation. So they think of corrections as we're not giving them more money to buy more weights for them to do this kind of stuff, and they're watching TV and they're getting all of this. The public is not thinking corrections guards need more people to help in these facilities. The public is looking at it as if we give them more money, they're just going to be having a better vacation. That's not what they're in prison for. Lock them up and throw away the key.
Well, when you're experiencing violence like this, it's kind of hard to talk about prison reform, but there are a lot of nonviolent criminals who are in prisons who probably ought not to be in them at the same time. Sure, there's violence going on, and they're looking for avenues to escape. And people are saying, "Why should I go to work today? Because I fear the people on my hallway or on my floor." So I'm sure the attendance is down amongst those employees we have at the same time. This is a big problem. Most of the focus for the last 5 years has been on our school system, like you suggest.
Well, we're going to move on. We've got a few minutes. I want to talk a little bit about the CIAA, the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Now, it tips off in Charlotte in less than 2 weeks, and some changes are in store, like reduced seating capacity and new ticketing policies. Now, the conference has an agreement to stay in Charlotte through 2020, but what happens beyond that? Do you all think they will stay, or do you think they could possibly be getting a little itch to move on to another place?
I think they would, for the most part, stay because it meets all the criteria of what CIAA has said it wanted. Enough room, centralized, people can get to things. But what bothers them, and alumni and everybody else should pay attention to it, is the CIAA only makes money if you go to the games. That's how they do the scholarships. But what we see is the city of Charlotte, businesses, hotels, everybody's making money but the CIAA. And my own personal thing is I have a problem with promoters who promote parties, charge $100 a person, or, you want a table, that'll be $500, and you don't give a dime to the CIAA. You swoop in here, you put on an event, and you swoop out with the money, but you didn't support the very essence of what got you here in the first place. And I just feel like all of those promoters and anybody else who's doing anything needs to make a contribution to CIAA. Now, there are other cities that have offered and have had CIAA before, but they didn't have what Charlotte had. So, it's a good mix, but will it continue after 2020? Even though their headquarters are here, they could still go someplace else.
This is the end of a 6-year contract.
Yeah.
We've known this is going to happen. And we know that when the last contract was put together, both the city and the CIAA were looking for a happy contract that would bring more business to CIAA, but also bring more people, more heads in beds in local hotels. We're much better situated for it again this time than we have been in the past. I think the negotiation is likely to be much more businesslike, and they will work out an agreement to both of their advantages.
And going back to what you were talking about earlier with some of these promoters, all it takes is one promoter that doesn't run their event as nicely as they should, and that can cause a big scandal and a disruption of.
Well, a couple of years ago, CIAA had to specifically go after promoters and say, we will sue you if you put our name on your flyers as CIAA anything. You have no affiliation with us. There were several businesses here in Charlotte that lost their business license, their liquor license, or could not activate because of how they did.
Yeah, but it is a tough situation because it's these outside groups, outside parties that are associating themselves with CIAA, but they're not with the organization themselves. And some of the violence we've seen year after year around the tournament, again, never happens at the actual games. It has happened at parties, at different events that, again, quote unquote say, well, we're tournament functions and whatnot. So I think it isn't going to be an easy sell. I think it is a win-win for the CIAA to stay here, and obviously Charlotte would love for them to stay here. But again, how do you fix that balance of it's all about scholarship. It's all about supporting our students, and unfortunately, people aren't supporting the students as much as they should be.
Well, PBS Charlotte will host a town hall meeting about upward mobility on Friday, March 9th at 10 o'clock right here in the studio. A number of community leaders are taking part, including James Ford and Andrea Smith with Leading on Opportunity, Dr. Candy Diedemeyer, president of Central Piedmont Community College, Charlotte Mecklenburg School Superintendent Clayton Wilcox, and Bob Morgan with the Charlotte Chamber. And if you would like to be part of our studio audience, we encourage you to call 704-330-5915 or register online at pbscharlotte.org. And before we go, tonight is my last time hosting Off the Record, and it's been my honor to come into your living room each week for the last 4 years. Starting in March, I'll be the morning and noon anchor at WWAY in my hometown, Wilmington, North Carolina. And for the last 14 years, I've called Charlotte home, and leaving the Queen City means I'm leaving great coworkers, wonderful colleagues like you guys, and friends like you at home. So don't think I'm not taking that lightly.
We're looking for a pathway back for you to come back.
Okay, all right, I'll hold you to that. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross writes this quote, and I want to share it with you. How do geese know when it's time to fly to the sun? Who tells them the seasons? How do we humans know when it's time to move on? As with the migrant birds, so surely with us, there is a voice within, if only we would listen to it, that tells us certainly when to go forth into the unknown. I'm listening to the voice within, and I'm planning to go to Wilmington, and I'm going to take some wonderful memories and experiences of living and working in Charlotte with me as I head to the coast and endeavor to make a difference in my hometown of Wilmington. By the way, my colleague Jeff Sonnier will be taking over Off the Record starting next week, and I have no doubt he'll do a wonderful job. Well, with that, we are out of time. So I want to say thanks again to our panel, John Paul Gallas with Greater Charlotte Biz, Kirsten Garris with Spectrum News, Nick Oxner with WBTV News, veteran broadcaster B. Thompson. And we also want to remind you to tune in and watch Carolina Impact Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. When Cannon Mills closed in 2003, it was the biggest one-day layoff in North Carolina. Tuesday night, we'll show you how Kannapolis is trying to bounce back. We'll also have a story about a man who started an adaptive sled hockey team in Charlotte, as well as a story about Olympic medalist Paul Wiley, who teaches figure skating. It's a great story. These stories and more Tuesday at 8 on Carolina Impact. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Thanks for watching and supporting PBS Charlotte. And until our paths cross again, good night and God bless. Thanks for watching PBS.
A production of PBS Charlotte.